of the Educational Leadership Forum panel discussion series focused on transforming education for human and planetary flourishing. Thank you for investing your time with us on a weekday. We deeply appreciate your presence and participation here at the forum. My name is Aryan Salman, and I'm the moderator for this panel discussion. Artificial intelligence has immense potential, especially in education, offering personalized learning experiences, efficient assessments, and increased accessibility, but also has issues and challenges such as plagiarism, AI being deployed to do some home assignments and tasks, uh, data privacy and security, unreliable information, bias and fairness related issues, accessibility and equity, and job displacement. On a lighter note, job security for us educators will not be an issue as our education systems so far uh, are very far from preparing learners to ask the right questions in the right sequence, as our current systems have been heavily focused on getting answers and the right answers from students. So, the accelerated development of generative AI coupled with the COVID-19 induced changes in education system will continue to impact learners and educators worldwide, accelerating us to adapt to the emerging digital age. These colossal shifts and changes around us make it crucial to explore the opportunities and challenges of leveraging this emerging technology in various aspects of education. Now, AI is a double edged sword that is here to stay, and our topic of discussion today is not just compelling but imperative in the face of accelerated changes and advancements in generative AI and other areas of education which could potentially impact the way we teach, learn, work, and live. In the context of education, we ask today, how can we leverage artificial intelligence to enhance learning experiences? As we navigate through this exciting and uncharted territory in education, we have the pleasure of having with us three stellar panelists, two of whom are here with us, and we're hoping that we'll be joined also by Glenn, who I'll introduce to you later. So each of these folks here are experts in their respective fields. So I'm delighted to welcome Iggy. Iggy Bittencourt is a visiting researcher at Harvard Graduate School of Education, and is a recipient of Brazilian National Order of Educational Merit Medal. He has his career dedicated to United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, especially Goal 4 and 5, devoting his work to the field of education, designing and implementing public policies and intelligent educational technologies needed to leapfrog the digital divide and promote equitable learning and well-being. So a warm welcome, Ige. I also take pleasure in welcoming Amartya Chakraborty. Uh, Amartya is pursuing his PhD in computer science and engineering at the Jadavpur University in Kolkata, India, as a research scholar. He is an assistant professor at the University of Engineering and Management in Kolkata. His research interests include social network analysis, sensor networks, Internet of Things enabled systems, and he has written for conferences, books, and peer reviewed journals. Uh, I would like to introduce Glenn. We don't have Glenn at the moment here, but I would just want to acknowledge that Glenn might join us anytime soon, and we hope that Glenn is keeping well. So, Dr. Glenn Ferrelli is an assistant professor with the Faculty of Business at Athabasca University in Canada. He has a doctorate of philosophy in information from the University of Toronto and a master's in professional communication from Royal Roads University. His research centers around the experience or user experience to understand how design, medium, context, and accessibility affect the adoption and perhaps the use of digital media innovations. So, Glenn has recently developed two courses that use artificial intelligence to power experiential learning for online students. So, it would be lovely if we have Glenn, and I'm hoping that Glenn is well. So, discussion today promises to shed light on how we can use AI not only to elevate learning experiences, but also to democratize education in this emerging new digital age. Our panelists, with their diverse experiences and unique perspectives, can guide us through compelling strategies and insights on how to leverage AI in education for human and planetary flourishing. Now, for those of you who are new to the Educational Leadership Forum, the Educational Leadership Forum was started with a mission to provide a platform for educational leaders to shape, empower, influence, and advance the discourse on transforming education for human and planetary flourishing. So, our goal is to create the space where experts, practitioners, educational leaders from across the globe can come together and share their knowledge, insights, and best practices for achieving this critical mission. So, through the Education Leadership Forum series, the Global Citizenship Foundation and the Council for Global Citizenship Education are committed and educators in their efforts to transform education. We believe that by connecting with one another and sharing our ideas and experiences, we can create this positive change in the world and ensure that all learners have the tools and resources they need to succeed, and all teachers have the same. So, our hope for today's panel discussion on leveraging artificial intelligence for to enhance learning experiences is that it will inspire you to think differently, that we could co-create the many futures of education together. So whether you're an educator, administrator, a policymaker, or a civil society member, we believe that you will come away with something valuable, a new idea, a fresh perspective, or a new strategy that you could apply to be more successful at doing what you're doing best. By investing in your own continuous professional development, you will help ensure that education continues to evolve and improve towards human and planetary flourishing. So, without further ado, I would like to yield the floor to Amartya.
Yes, thank you, Aryan. Am I audible properly?
Amartya, I think there's disturbance in your voice. So, Ige, can you go ahead first, and then Amartya can come in.
Yes, am I audible?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me well? Okay, so first of all, thank you very much, Sawan, and it's a great pleasure for being here in this Education Leadership Forum to discuss this amazing theme, and this topic has been, I guess, discussed for most of organizations in education in the world, especially because of what happened very recently with the launch of ChatGPT to everyone. And I guess that it's more than timely to discuss this topic and maybe to go a little bit deeper in the discussion. I really like the perspective that Education Leadership Forum proposed as a way or as a space for us to discuss education, not only for those with, for example, technology available, but for all. That's the challenge we face in the world, right? I can see here in the chat people introducing themselves. Most of them, I can see people from Pakistan. Very recently, one post from Tokyo, India, Philippines, Sierra Leone, Austria, Milan, Nigeria. Lots of people from India, Rwanda, which is amazing, right? People from everywhere are here discussing this topic. And one of the things that I could observe when I was reading about the introductions in the chat was that most of you are from the global south. And when we think about the global south, we have lots of challenges. I will get back that point very soon because, in my view, this is the core of my discussion today, which is how can we really leverage artificial intelligence to enhance learning experience for all. And when we think about not only the most recent discussion about artificial intelligence in education and how, for example, solutions like ChatGPT could impact or leverage or enhance learning environments, I would back a little bit when Andrew in from he's from Stanford now. He was from Coursera, Baidu, and he said that AI is the new electricity. That's the one of the quotes from Andrew Ng, and he gave lots of reasons to try to argument for this claim. Very reasonable reasons, I would say, but at the same time, it's a challenge to think about that. Why? As I told you, we have a challenge related to lack of resources in many places, and therefore we still have a digital divide. By that perspective, and we cannot ignore technologies and artificial intelligence to enhance learning environments. In 2017, we had the Beijing Consensus of Artificial Intelligence, on which all the states related to United Nations signed the document to think about how AI could be applied in education. And just after that, we had a document from UNESCO with the same perspective. And it's interesting because the main question that UNESCO raised in the document was, how can AI be leveraged to enhance education? It's very similar to the title of this topic of this panel now. So, in the discussion about that UNESCO raised, was exactly two, I would say, sub questions related to this main question. One is one was, how can we ensure AI's ethical, inclusive, and equitable use of education in education? And the one was, how can we prepare humans to live and work with AI? Well, those are the main questions that UNESCO report raised, so that we can think about. So I would like to bring these two questions here. I would focus on the first one in this first part of the panel. I hope I still have 3 or 4 minutes, since we have I and Amartya here, so we have 7 minutes and 30 seconds. And then the first question is about inclusive, equitable, and ethical AI, use of AI, right? I would like to bring you another data, a data from the World Bank. The World Bank every year published the usage of technology of internet worldwide, not only the usage of internet, but also digital skills, um, consumption of mobile cell phones, and so on. The data is it started from 1990, and the last one was 2021, I guess. When we look at that data, we saw an increase in all the constructs they evaluated. But when we try to do a prediction, we did a prediction to see, okay, are we having equitable usage of internet or development of digital skills? And we did that prediction, and we saw that we have a huge gap, which means that only around 2,100, yes, in almost 90 years, we have basically the equitable usage of internet and equitable digital skills development from the high income countries to lower income countries, which means that till now we're going to have lots of inequitable AI usage of AI. So I would say this question that UNESCO raised about how can we ensure AI's ethical, inclusive, and equitable use in education is not possible if we think the way we are developing technologies nowadays. So it's almost a question that is dead. It's hard if we think that we are really trying to promote equitable usage of AI in education. So that's why my main perspective here is: can we think on the use of artificial intelligence in education in research constrained environments that do not have internet access, environments on which the students do not have computers or laptops? Can we think about AI in those contexts? if we not somehow propose solutions to work or to be available to those environments, we are I would say we are part of the problem. We are not leveraging artificial intelligence to enhance learning experience for all. And that's why I liked when I saw on the chat so many people from Global South. The question that I ask you is, can you think in your context with resource constrained environments the use of artificial intelligence in education? That's the question that I would like to ask you back. Okay. And then we are asking this question in the last, I would say, 5 years. And we came up with a new concept, which is called artificial intelligence unplugged, which means those unplugged users using or being benefit for the use of artificial intelligence in education. One of the policies that we are working in Brazil is called learning recovery policy. And in the last 2 years, we worked on that policy. The question was exactly that. Can we promote the development of skills of students? And specifically, we work on writing skills for all in a country that only 25 of the teachers have the digital skills, and in a country with lots of inequality related to internet connectivity. And what we did was to develop an AI ED solution that could take a picture. The only skill that we asked for the teacher was to take a picture of a sheet of the students that could handwriting, and then we used visual computer and natural language processing, and we provide a feedback for the teacher to work with their students. So all technology we demanded from the school was one smartphone. That's all. No internet connectivity would be necessary because they could took the picture and then they could go to a place with the internet and synchronize with the cloud. And no device available for the students. All the feedback is given to the teacher, and the teacher can work with the students to develop their skills that they are still missing. So this is just one example to give you some ideas how we are working, and I will give back to Salman to lead again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ige. Amartya, are you able to connect with us?
Yes, I'm so.
Yes. So I yield the floor to you, so you can make your initial remarks. Amartya? I think Amartya has issues around the connection. Now, Ige, I have a question for you. We are talking about uh, uh, AI and equity, and you've illustrated, and I mean, it's like an example of how AI can be used in low tech contexts where, like, you have low technology and limited access to resources. Now, given that, like, this context where for a lot of educators, AI is ChatGPT, but there are a lot more generative technologies. So can you shed a light on what kind of technologies are out there that educators can explore? And how do you think, like, that they can take this to the classroom where you have those resources to be taken um, in those contexts? How do we go about it?
Okay, thank you, Salman. Yeah, that's one of the things in the common sense. So ChatGPT is AI, and before that was AI is machine learning. So AI is a much broader concept. If we think about AI, we have in the history of AI, I would say in the last 70 years, we had different perspective working with AI. So, for example, we have symbolic AI. I will not go into the details and much technical, but we have symbolic AI, we have connectionist AI, we have evolutionist AI in one of the perspectives. Okay, there are different ways that you can see AI, and AI was much about trying to mimic human behavior. Okay, so if us human beings can do a specific task, like let's think about medicine. Can we diagnose cancer? Can you do a surgery? Yes, those are very complex activities done by human beings. Nowadays, AI could mimic human behavior, for example, to do a surgery, or AI could reason as a human to diagnose cancer. So, in a very recent paper from published in one of the Nature journals about diagnosing breast cancer, one of the AI solutions was able to be with an accuracy of 98%, which is much better than human beings. So AI can be used, for example, to do this. And once you use AI to do like to diagnose cancer, then you can work with the patients, provide the right treatment, and so on. So it's AI augmenting AI. So artificial intelligence augmenting human intelligence. So that's one of the ways that we can think about AI. But how can we do that in education? Let's think about personalized learning. Imagine you, a teacher, with 30 students or 40 students or even more in your classroom, physical or online. How can you know if the students are understanding, if the students are answer a question and he made a mistake because of a misconception, if he couldn't answer the question, or if he just guessed how to do the question, how can you do with so many students and so many activities? So AI can be used in that perspective to personalize, to understand what are the challenges and missing concepts of the students, and then provide personalized content or new questions, or even give a feedback for the teacher to work with the student. So that's one of the ways that you can use AI. And that's my son. You see, David. For example, how can you use AI to raise a child? It's almost impossible. That's why we need human beings.
All right. So thank you, Ige, for that one. So
Sorry
coming,
about that.
so coming next to, like, the idea of say, AI in us. Let's begin, like, breaking down the whole idea of, like, the education process. So one, in terms of, like, looking at learning. So how, in what ways do you think learning will change with the use of AI? And I'm really looking forward to the responses from people who are participating in the discussion. So if you can use the chat box, and perhaps, like, since we've had, like, our panelists drop out because of technical concerns, we could also, like, just have you come in and, like, share how you think and what are you doing to make things different. So that way we could leverage this space to make it enriching for everybody out here.
Okay, that's a very good point. Yesterday, I gave a talk in my university to students from undergrad about that topic. In one of the things that I would like to bring is about a report published from about generative AI, and this report showed that uh, from 1940 to now, 85%, 85, we had a new, the creation of new jobs, which means in a total of 85% of the jobs created after 1940 were related to digital technologies. 85%. And if we think about those occupations, uh, in 10 years, technologies like ChatGPT will affect 65% of all the professions in the world. Imagine if you in the audience is not from education, it's quite high, it's with a high probability to be affected by artificial intelligence. If you are in the field of education, you know that's reality now, right? So based on that, what can we think about what is learning, what we expect of a citizen for the 21st century? So those are questions that we have to think about. We cannot focus, for example, only in content. We cannot focus only on uh, teach the student how to do math. Okay, this is basic foundational literacy and numeracy that we need to ensure for our students, but that's not enough. What we need to look somehow based on another report from McKinsey is that lots of the new jobs will demand social emotional skills and more sophisticated cognitive skills. For example, we can think about complex problem resolution, the critical thinking, creativity, people management, negotiation, cognitive flexibility, emotional intelligence. Those are some of the skills that we expect from our students to learn and become, I would say, citizens to engage in civic debate. But that's not all, right? This is what we are thinking about the students. But we, as a teachers, with technologies available like ChatGPT, what can we demand? If you ask, okay, you give a paper, an article for the students to read, and you say, okay, write a summary of of that paper. The students will use technology like ChatGPT to do that automatically. So we can rethink the way we do the assessments. We need to rethink the skills that we are demanding for the students to develop. For example, we can use tools like ChatGPT to promote insights. So if I have a view about democratic artificial intelligence, I can discuss with ChatGPT about the democratic artificial intelligence, how to democratize artificial intelligence. So things like that. I hope I answered your question, Salman.
Yes, yes, Igor. Thank you for that one. I think one thing that I could take away from the discussion that we are having so far is to do with feedback and insights. And as educators, we do understand that, the relationships that we have with our learners is very important. It's very essential for us to build those nurturing relationships. And I think AI can actually help us consolidate that. I remember an educator in my network who ends up writing 100 feedbacks, literally, two different classes that they end up managing. Again, workload is an issue, but I think AI can come in out there. And one of the things that this teacher ends up doing, which I find extremely fascinating, is would end up using what do you call prompts with Chat GPT to create a more personalized feedback, which is very affirmative and motivating for the child, but is also like for so many students, but also with a personalized touch. So I think like personalized feedback could change the nature of our relationship with kids, because sometimes because of our workloads we might not be able to give the feedback that we would have loved to give. So perhaps that is one area. And perhaps the second thing, when you're talking about the whole idea of democratic what do you call mindsets and going ahead with debates. So I feel that you Chat GPT can enable discussions, and also because Chat GPT is not perhaps most accurate, to look at how can students develop this curiosity to find the right information, or move towards, or move closer to the multiple truths that we see in our times today. So that was quite interesting, Ige, for me personally. So I think we have a few comments here. I think we are having difficulties with Amartya, and I understand that it can be a little anxiety inducing when, like, you're in a discussion and you're not able to connect. But I think we can go ahead with the comments and then wait for Amartya to join us. So one thing that I really found interesting out here is integration of AI in student performance and assessments, and, like, defining learning outcomes. Okay, I think this was by Edward Landoy. If you can just highlight Edward's message, I think that would be great. Um,
Can
so,
you repeat? I didn't listen. What was the highlight of Edward?
so Edward was talking about how we can use AI to both assess student performance as well as define learning outcomes. And in my experience of working with educators from around the world, including international schools, one of the challenges that we have is to come up with effective student learning outcomes. So a lot of times, this is one space where it's mostly like an Achilles heel, like how do you define effective SLOs? I think that's a very interesting area. But again, like, with AI, perhaps the way we look at assessments would change. In fact, we were having this discussion about a few days ago, like, how would you rely on, say, tasks and assessments, whether it's done by an individual or, like, by AI. So I think the nature of assignments will also change. The nature of your assessments could change. So perhaps we could also explore that. So I think Ige has a presentation to share. Yes, Ige.
Uh, yes, I have, but I'm okay not sharing. We can
Perfect.
have a discussion here. I think the comments in the chat is much more interesting than my presentation. So we can just keep with the comments of the audience and discuss a little bit more.
Yes,
But
I think we are
uh,
through to Amartya, Ige.
yeah, sure, Amartya.
Yes, Amartya, your take.
Am I audible now? Am I audible now? Am I audible now? Okay. At the very onset, I'd like to apologize to all the people in the audience, the panelists, and the moderator. I've had a power outage at home. I was ready with the whole setup. I just ran 2 kilometers to my university. I just set up in the lab. I'm extremely sorry. Uh, as much as I could catch up with my phone, I got the gist of the things. I'd like to, say at the very onset, until and unless we ensure that everybody has at least a proper electricity at their homes, at their residence, then I think we should, work towards providing AI and such technologies to people, because that's not a job of any educationist, any researcher. That's not something you and I can do. That's a matter of policy. And there were many points that was put up by Aryan, and I'm so sorry, sir. I just I think it's Igibert, Mr. Igibert, my fellow panelist. You put up some excellent points, but the point is very sad that a person has to run 2 kilometers just in order to be giving a presentation, right? So let me just start off by sharing a slide. I think it would be better for me, from my perspective, if I could put up my points.
Please, Amartya.
Could you please confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Uh, as you people were discussing, we can leverage AI, right? We can enhance the learning experience, and there's a list of some things that we are doing in AI, right? There's a list of some things that we are doing day to day, and I've made a list, and there's a purpose behind that. I'm going to delve into it. The first and most important is we can identify where is the knowledge gap in our education system, right? So as you were saying just a few moments back, that we can analyze and we can process the data of the students' performance identify where they are lacking behind. Fine. So this is a very important use case in of AI in education. The way we can leverage AI in education, we can develop materials that are easy to understand, along with ChatGPT and all. There are many such systems that have come up, and that the students are regularly using at our universities in order to summarize the text, minimize the text, and simplify the text. These are very important three things that they're doing. And I've been observing their, the output of these texts, and it's really not indistinguishable between a person's writing and a AI's output. Fine. So this is another very important use case. As an educator, we also have access to more data. So there are certain restrictions, put up by these firewalled or paywalled research journals or such publications, where people do not get access to that amount of current research, that amount of current data, that amount of knowledge. So with AI, this barrier could be removed, where educators also have access to huge amounts of data and knowledge across geographical locations. Right? This is a very powerful weapon that we could have. Of course, for the students, we could provide personalized content, and we could generate data-driven crucial insights. That is something that I feel is very much useful for us, because still today, no matter how much outcome-based education and these things are being implemented in almost every country across the world, there is still a problem that the top 15% and the bottom 15% of the students, they feel left out, or they feel neglected in general. That's what I feel as a student, as a teacher now. That's what I feel from their feedback. So there should be a measure of how we can bridge this gap, maybe with the help of AI. We must look into it. We can create digital content in many forms. So of course, these are some very simple examples. You can make PPTs, you can generate images, you can generate audio and video. So what's the purpose behind showing this? That we can leverage AI to generate more better educational content, not the traditional presentation that we use. We can make an animation, for example, without actually going into understanding of a powerful software or a powerful piece of code. We can directly leverage AI to generate some beautiful piece of animation that can capture the understanding, capture the vision of the students. That is also something that is a possibility in today's day. And then there is the virtual presence with the help of VR, so that the students can experience events, both natural as well as man-made, from the coziness of the classroom without leaving their seats, and they can visit all across the world. That is again something that can be very much enhanced with the inclusion of the upcoming AI systems. But there is a simple thing which I want to focus after discussing all the pros of AI. This is from a publication from 2003, just a decade back. And this is a very, very well discussed topic. It's a 5-factor model of online education. So what are the critical factors behind a proper online education system, and what can an AI do? So this particular subsequently that has been subsequently used in the last decade in multiple works. It's a well-cited article. If you go through the references. Anyway, the factors they pointed out were communication, support, presence, guidance, and social intimacy. And in all the works that have come up in all these years, communication, support, and presence, AI can provide up till a certain extent. What AI lacks, at least in my opinion, I would like to get the opinion of my fellow panelists and all the audience too, is that AI will lack, or AI does lack, in providing proper guidance and also providing social intimacy. Simply put, a proper form of intimacy is not a proper greeting for a person who is depressed, for a person who is in need of a fellow human being's understanding,
Amartya, am I audible to you? Okay, I think Amartya is facing concerns around tech, so I think he's lost connection. So we'll be joined back by him. In the meantime, Ige, if you can, like, carry on that conversation around um, presence and sociability factor. So, what are your thoughts around it?
Thank you, Salman. I guess Amartya was bringing very interesting discussion about the five model about of education. Salman, if you can close your mic, mute your mic, I can listen it back. Okay. Some factors that Amartya was highlighting about that paper. One was related to the social intimacy. The comment, for example, that someone just did about presence. AI can be used to that. AI can be used to detect the behavior of students in task and off task. So it's possible for an AI solution to know if the students are having a meaningful interaction by understanding if they are focusing on the content, if they are focusing on the question, if they are not mind wandering, if they are not even focused on the. Usually, we have gamification, focus on the elements of gamification available on the interface. So you can understand by using AI how present the student is in a specific interaction, and based on that, you can do different kind of an analysis. For example, is the student mind wandering? For imagine I'm watching a video and the student start to move his eyes to different parts. There are some AI solutions researched by Sidney DeMello showed that try to understand if the student is mind wandering. And if the student is mind wandering, maybe that video is not interesting. Or maybe the student is just tired of so many content. So we can use AI to understand that, to improve what is available for them in online learning. We can use, for example, AI to know if the student is having a flow experience, which means the best state on which the student is has a balance between the challenge and the skill. So Amartya is with us again. So maybe I should give the floor for him.
Yes, yes, yes.
Should I continue with the presentation? Yeah, thank you. Right.
I think we have an issue again about it.
AI is able to grasp or understand the way a student is behaving, the way a student's real-time feedback is. But AI does not really provide human intuition, and that is something that I just wanted to highlight. That it is required more in online education, but also teacher or an educator is there in the classroom taking a class. Uh, there are some drawbacks in AI that I can see all around me, that I witness all around me in the schools, universities, wherever, what we have in the current education system here in my country. There's a huge amount of inequality in AI enabled education in the form of social and financial constraints and disparity. And I kept it at the, as the first point, because there are lakhs and lakhs of colleges and schools in my country where the basic necessities of water and electricity are not even there. So introducing AI is not a bad thing, but AI should not be for the privileged people, for the people from moneyed backgrounds, or who are studying only, who are able to afford to study in educations where the financial requirements are that much, right? So that's the huge issue that I feel should be removed or should be addressed before we talk about introducing AI as a formally in education. The second thing that I find that happens to the students that I supervise, that I get a chance to supervise, is that AI has become almost the existing tools like ChatGPT. They have become tools of automating the existing instructional methods. So there is no, there is a one size fits all approach. So you type in a prompt, you get an answer, and you just use it. So there is no concept of innovation, and that actually leads to the last point, that the students are somewhere, I feel they are losing their critical thinking skills. They are becoming dependent on AI systems for all purposes, and there is a loss of human intuition. I find them not using their brain, and that is alarming for us, because that is something we expect students to do when they are coming for education. So I would also like to put this forth for the whole audience and my panelists as well for the discussion. That do you think that this dependence on AI is turning our students blunt, or is this something that we can cope up with? I'll just take a few more minutes, and I'll put up a small representation of something that happened a few days back with one of my students. So he was working on his master's thesis, and he was working on the topic of community context enabled social network analysis. So I asked, what he did was he worked with the whole literature survey using ChatGPT, and he typed in these sort of a prompt that please give me some bibliography details on the topic, and he typed in the topic. ChatGPT provided him with a set of papers, right? And he asked ChatGPT specifically for the paper details, and asked ChatGPT to write about those papers, and he submitted his initial document. But what happened when we got the initial document is that I found some of the papers there which are too good to exist, which are too good to be true. So I went on to look up the details of these papers, and what happened was, some papers like these, we found that when you go to the DOI, these papers either they are for a different publication, or these papers don't exist. Right? These DOIs do not exist. Uh, am I still in the presentation? Yeah, thank you. Was very alarming to me, supervisor and people all across the institution, because this was something that we had not thought of, right? And the student was oblivious of the fact that he had done something that was critically wrong, but he was very much happy with the fact that ChatGPT had helped him, solve the huge issue of going through the literature survey. That is not something he should have done, and he was duly penalized for it. But this is another thing that I want to point out as my last as the last point of my presentation, that it's not the fault of ChatGPT, because ChatGPT, when you open it up, it tells you that these are the limitations. It can occasionally produce harmful instructions or biased content, and it can generate incorrect information. That is what it had done in this case, right? But the point is that the students need to use AI in an informed manner, in a responsible manner. They need to know what is the limitation of AI, how far AI can help it, right? They need to understand how far they can go with AI, because AI as a tool is very much ludicrous for the students. They feel that, okay, this is something that has solved all the problems in my life. I don't need to write a single word, right? Put up a topic, it will give you, paragraphs and paragraphs of text. But they don't know, they don't even try to know, they don't even try to look up whether that text has some real logical technical validity or not, because, and they can't blame the AI system for that. We can't blame ChatGPT for generating a publication that doesn't exist, because that's what ChatGPT does, right? So this is another point that I feel of the usefulness or usability of AI, and that's a matter of discussion. With that, I would like to rest. I would love to participate and hear the ideas of the audience as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amartya, for your amazing insights. I really like this question around, like, AI, uh, like, stopping us from being creative, curious, and to come up with intuition response in terms of, like, the basic urge for us to, like, find knowledge and come up and create knowledge. So my question, this is for all of us in the audience and in the panel, like, what is that one thing that you think we need to change that would enable us to leverage AI, right? So we all have, so assuming that we all have access to AI at this point in time, what is that one thing that you need to change to make sure that AI is a force for good within education. Because as I can see, there are a lot of limitations around AI. So, what is that one thing in the current space, if you change, you could leverage? So, what do you think that is? So, we'll start with Ige, and I'm also going to highlight a few from the audience out here.
Well, that's a very good question. My answer might be counterintuitive, but I would say we should stop thinking about AI. And why I'm saying that, I think we should think more about education and be quite clear which challenge we have, which skills we want to develop. Someone, can you close your mic,
Yes.
please? So, which skills we want to develop in students, and then we can think: is AI useful for that, or do I have a better, easier, cheaper, and more inclusive way to do? So, in my perspective, we should stop thinking about AI as a silver bullet and start to think about which challenge we really have in education and which skills we really want to develop in students. And then we think, is AI the best way? Okay, so that's a counterintuitive perspective, but we shouldn't think about, for example, ChatGPT as the new solution. That happens every time. One year was Wikipedia, blog, Facebook, Twitter, Khan Academy, Coursera, ChatGPT. One day was calculator, and in 5 years will be another technology. And then we're gonna think again. Okay, how can we use technology to improve education? No, my perspective is different. Which challenge we have in education, which skills we want to develop in students, and then I think, is AI the best solution? And therefore, to have this change of mindset would be we need to develop a digital resilience. We need to be able to think critically about those technologies and the challenges we face in education to decide if that's the best way or not. That's my answer, Salman.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that one, Nikhil. This reminds me of what happened recently uh, with an with AI being used by a lawyer. So a lawyer ended up preparing an entire case using AI, and all the laws, all the citations were all cooked up, so you know what happened with the case. So there's so the whole idea of using AI responsibly, one, is very important, I think. The second thing is, to prepare our learners to know that this is just a tool and this is not a replacement for your brains. So I think that would be very essential component as we move forward. Now, I think one thing that we can change as perhaps a system, perhaps as an ecosystem itself, is how we look at learning itself, right? So there was a time when knowledge was super important because of the historical reasons that we have. People had to memorize things and keep them in the head. So now with AI, recalling and retaining information and having this networked idea of information is so interesting and evolving that at one point in time we would not need to remember anything, but to be able to utilize the information, or the dearth of information, not dearth, perhaps the overflow of information that we have. So perhaps I think this is my perspective. I would really love to know from all of you what you think, is to change the way we look at what learning means and what is the purpose of learning, right? So, uh, is there something that you think that we could change? So, we could also highlight that. That would be interesting. All right. So, I think we have one where we we're using AI to build critical thinking skills. So I think this is a very interesting way of looking at it. Perhaps, like, to have dialogue or discourse around a particular topic. That's interesting. So, uh, again, if we can come to, like, the second part of it, like, a lot of things around education focuses around assessments. So, how do you think uh, we could use AI to have assessments, or do you think that there is a need for us to rethink assessments as we see them now?
Well, that's a very good question. Well, I will answer in two perspectives. One is from the public policy perspective. One is from the teacher's perspective. Okay, and of course, this is also related to what education means and what we expect from the students, because the way we focus again. Someone, can you mute your mic? And again, the way we do assessment nowadays is still open. Someone, your mic. The way we do assessment nowadays in public policy is okay. Let's assess the knowledge of students so that we can create public policy. Usually, that is very expensive because, for example, imagine a country like Brazil or India with many people. India has more than 1 billion people. Brazil has 200 million people, more than 200 million people. It's a lot. And of course, not all of them are students, but we have millions and millions of students that we need to evaluate so that we can decide which policy to create. If we think, for example, again about assessing writing skills or even fluency of students when reading a text, usually we do that without the use of any technology. In Brazil, that is quite expensive and it took lots of time to do when it's done. Usually, most of the assessments are not made because of the cost. And one of the solutions that, we developed was to using AI was to help in public policy. So you can now very fast and much more cheaper than using traditional ways. You can provide the national assessment so that you can create public policy. So writing skills, and now we are developing to fluency as well in Portuguese. So this is one of the things that we can use AI so that we can rethink about public policy. Not rethink about public policy, but be more accurate when designing a public policy. And the other perspective, of course, about assessment, I wouldn't rethink assessment, but I would first rethink what we want for our students as to develop these skills as citizens. So I would bring a framework from Project Zero from Harvard Graduate School of Education. They developed a framework called Citizen Learners Framework. In that framework, they raised four questions: who we are, which considers like interdependent learners, critical and creative thinkers, emotional agents. Usually we tend to ignore emotion, but we shouldn't. Diverse knowers. We have different cultures, different background. We cannot ignore that. Problem finding and solvers, designers and makers. And that's one of what we think about the question who we are. The other is what do we learn? It's not only about content. It's not only a disciplinary perspective, but interdisciplinary as well. Ethical stances, actionable content, and so on. The other is how do we learn? How do we learn? We can observe, we reflect, challenge assumptions. In that perspective, we can use a lot of AI. And the last one is what do we do with what we learn, and then we engage in civic dialogue. We can demonstrate understanding across contexts, not only specific contexts, envision and inspire to make a better world. So once you see, I'm not talking about content at all. So rethink assessment is also about rethink what we expect for our students to develop and engage in civic dialogue and navigate complexity, build relationships, and affect the world in an ethical perspective, making the world a better place to be.
Thank you for that one, Ige. Amartya, uh, what is the one thing that you think we should change in the current system to uh, actually unlock the potential of AI in education for those who can access it, of course?
Yeah, it should be the understanding of what AI is, because the way we perceive AI, it is coming up time and again, but it's really sad that we perceive AI as it's a one-stop solution for all our issues. It's not that. AI is much more beyond it, right? So it's not something that is just there for telling me how to plan a birthday party or writing my master's thesis. AI is something that can do a lot beyond that, and we see applications of that in research, right? In industry-oriented research, we find AI applications in critical healthcare systems, and that's just one example of what AI can do. But the basic understanding about any new and developing technology should reach the grassroots, and as long as that is missing, that is lacking, the adaptation is that much slow and that much poor, and that is what leads to these such kinds of misconceptions about these systems, these things like AI, because as Mr. Igibot was also saying, that few years later, a decade from now, we'll have some more new technologies that we may not even think of right now, and we'll again have a similar discussion that what about this particular technology XYZ? How do we adapt to it? Can we leverage it for a better life, for a better education, for a better healthcare system? Uh, but all throughout these technological advancements, there is a serious lack in, as I feel, there's a serious lack in proper implementation of policies that people at the grassroots level, each and every student, it should be a part of their curriculum. How you interact with an AI tool, just make it a part of their curriculum. They have so many things, right? Because they'll end up working with AI, they'll end up using AI, but they'll end up misusing it. It's almost like like in our societies, there's a concept of smoking is a taboo, drinking is a taboo. So you don't talk about those things in front of your children. You don't teach. You keep try to keep them away. Try to keep those things hidden. So when they find those things out at an adult age, they are more prone to misusing those things. It's a fact. That's what happens. In the not so well-to-do families mostly. So AI, something similar is happening with AI. We are keeping it restricted. We are keeping it behind the wheel. AI is something that is very much wondrously new. It is something that will revolutionize everything, but we are not telling people about it. We are not dealing with the basics of it. People are not getting to know about it, but when they are getting exposure to it, they are getting exposure to ChatGPT, and they think, wow, this is something that will change my life. But AI is much more beyond it. We need to work on these policies of how we should introduce AI to people, introduce such technologies to people. That is very much critical. That is something lacking in today's world. I think Aryan, you are muted.
Yes. Am I audible? All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that one, Amartya. I think I was going through the chats right now, and I think there's this very interesting comment by Martin Antonio, if I pronounced your name right. So it was about how education is undergoing a paradigm shift, um, and then talking about like how we need to focus or shift our focus to assessing how they attain the skill and how they demonstrate the target skill required to master it, than just looking at the content. So I think I found that quite interesting, to focus on allowing the child to reflect on the process of acquiring a skill as well as demonstrating that skill. So that is something that I found it interesting. So thank you for sharing that one, Martin. Amartya, my question to you around AI in terms of so you spoke about how we need to empower learners to use AI. We also see that a lot of schools banned AI from their networks, from children using it. Now, given the context of AI being a bit controversial in education, how do you think systems where AI is still banned? What are educators who are participating here from systems where AI is already banned in their spaces? How can they navigate through this scenario? Do you have any ideas around that?
It's a very interesting question, but in such systems, the onus lies with the educator to, you know, propagate in proper circles that this ban should be lifted. I think that's the main perspective. That's the main job that an educator should undertake before, in order to do away with this ban, or in order to do away with such problems. It's the onus lies with the educator always to bring up in the forefront any new technology, any new topic, any new domain of understanding or research, and to make it easy for people to grasp. Make sure that people understand that it's approachable. It's not something that will eat you up. So unless an educator takes this up as a first job, this such repercussions will keep continuing. That's what I feel. I would love to hear Mr. Rippert's comment on it too.
Thank you for that one, Amartya. We'll take a few questions before we wrap the discussion. Um, One of the questions that's being asked, I think we have addressed it to an extent, but I would really like to see if we can bring out something more from this question. How do we encourage students to use AI tools in a more constructive way? Number one, and I think a part of that question is while keeping their originality and creativity intact. So I think if Ige can come and then Amartya, if you can carry forward the discussion, that would be great.
Well, I think we're gonna back to the question about assessment and how we think about assessment, right? For example, in our course about we teach artificial intelligence in education. Professor Sage and I and others teach AI in education here at School of Education at Harvard. And the other that was last year. We're going to teach again this year. And in the last spring, we thought about educational technology and public policy, and students were allowed to use ChatGPT, but not to basically uh, provide all the answer for them, but to be critical thinkers, to for example, when we were discussing about public policy and the phases we can have in a public policy and the solution the students were thinking about AI, or they were thinking about technology to a specific public policy, they could have engaged in a discussion with ChatGPT. So I guess we need first of all to define some norms, how we should be in discussion about education, and what is the importance of in this case, the students on being ethical. I guess what we need to be clear is that okay, you can use tools like that. We are not going to force or avoid. You are free to use. But is that what you really want? Because I think we first of all we need to bring this discussion with our students about that. And we are not, in my perspective as a teacher, we are not in a position to uh, enable or disable the use of any technology, but how that technology can really provide them to more deepen discussions about a specific topic. Otherwise, as I marked it and a comment from the chat, we would promote more laziness. So I need we that's the main point, right? We shouldn't on one hand think about very basic assessment like do a summary of a text, and at the same time we need to highlight the ethical stances. That is the question related to what do we learn, right? We need to learn how to be ethical, otherwise we are just making the world even worse.
Sure. Ige, Amartya, if you can
Yeah.
join in.
See, as far as my understanding goes, AI is not something that we have that has suddenly turned up in 2023, right? It's here since the last many decades. So till today, when when people talk of ChatGPT, when people talk of such AI tools and such robots that can work well, robots that can interact with humans, there is again this certain there's a mask, there's a certain veil that we are keeping. We are keeping people behind a curtain. People really don't know what is happening there. So as you had asked, what should we do in order to make this part of the system such that all the ethical issues are avoided as well as proper and responsible usage is ensured. Uh, the best way to carry this forward, I feel, is to introduce this as a part of the curriculum. From not from maybe a nursery or a kindergarten student, but at least for a class 5 or a class 10 student, a student who is just going for his appearing his for the secondary examinations. They need to be aware of these things so that at a later stage they can responsibly interact with AI, because AI is here to stay. We can all vouch for it, right? It's not something that is disappearing in a few years. Just as internet was a technological revolution that has worked its way into all of our lives, no matter how financially disabled that person is, internet is a part of their lives. No matter how bad the network is, that's a separate issue, but internet is a part of their life, right? And they have adapted themselves generation by generation. So AI is something similar. It's here to stay. So why not educate people from the very grassroots? Make it a part of their curriculum, make it a part of their habit, their daily living. Help them interact with it properly, and they will not misuse it. But if you don't help them interact with it properly, they will turn up misusing it. Not misusing it maybe for a criminal offense, but misusing it for something that will, again, damage their own thought process, make them more lazy, more blunt, and stop them from thinking. And that is something that we find happening. That's my take. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amartya, for that one. I think we have another question which I'm tempted to answer, but I would also like your thoughts on it. So, do you think AI will ever replace the value of teachers' presence in the near future? Is that then a threat or an advantage? So, I would like you both to go ahead, and then I'm going to wait to respond at the end. So there you go. So Ige, if you can go ahead, and then Amartya, you can come in.
Well, that's an interesting question. My answer is no. It's not going to replace teachers. I think AI will augment teachers. Okay, so if we develop skills, we as teachers develop skills like digital resilience, then we can have the potential of AI to enhance those learning experiences. So I don't think AI will replace teachers, but I think that AI is a danger to replace bad teachers. Okay, sometimes we used to think teachers as only one category, but we have teachers and teachers, and sometimes uh, it would be great to have all the teachers in a very good level, but that's not the reality, right? So sometimes when we have teachers not engaged with a huge level of absenteeism, demotivated, of course there are systemic reasons for that. But once we have a case like that, maybe we should go. with AI solutions, and then provide some kind of interactions and maybe bring other stakeholders like teaching assistants to support in the combination of AI and so on. So I think that AI will not replace teachers, but I think that bad teachers should be somehow replaced by AI in the future.
Right. So,
That was a strong one, Ige.
yeah,
Thank you for that one. And Amartya,
yeah, I completely agree with him. It's a fact. The way academe works right now, there's a lot of, at least again, what I can see here, there are private universities, such as the one where I work, and there are not no proper guidelines of how actually a professor or a teacher or even a technical assistant or a teaching assistant, how much pressurized they should be. So that is something that leads to people losing their motivation, because people come to this profession with a certain motivation, right? So that is something that leads to bad teachers. Maybe a small fraction of them are genuinely bad, but what I feel is mostly people lose their motivation being in this field, because that is what the policies are doing. That is how things are designed. Most of these places are, putting up immense amount of pressure on people. They're unable to make their moves and are unable to go through their work. They're unable to publish, and there's a publish or perish cycle that is again pushing teachers who are not interested in research towards research. So there are so many factors here. But again, keeping that aside, AI is not a threat to somebody who can teach, somebody who can reach out to a student, somebody who can interact with a student without speaking a word. When you go to a classroom and you take a class and you are delivering your lecture, you see the student's reaction, you see their face, you see how they are blinking, you see how they are shaking their head, how they are looking at you. You immediately get, feel about what is going on in their head, and that is what makes you a teacher. And no matter how well a gesture recognition system works, uh, this intuition, this human intuition, is something unique. And actually, these AI systems are a result of human intuition itself. So, a student, I don't think can replace the master. That is not something that will happen soon. That's all.
right? I think that those were interesting insights around that question. Just to add to what both Ige and Amartya has spoken out here, I think with AI, a teacher could be liberated. Like currently, I feel that teachers are doing the same thing each year without changing much because the system is so rigid in many places. I'm not saying this is everywhere, but in many places you have systems where teachers are repeatedly living the same life every year by doing the same thing. I think that would change with AI coming into the picture. So if a teacher is empowered through a capacity building exercise using AI to transform the way they teach, I think a lot of learning experiences will change. So personally, when this whole question came in, I was like, okay, what are the things that could make one replace a teacher, right? Uh, I think it's to do with the human connect that we have. No matter how emotionally intelligent artificial intelligence can get, uh, I still feel that human touch is so beautiful. Like if you're having a Zoom call, it's a very different experience than being in that same room just for 1 hour. So I mean, say it's as beautiful as that. So as long as teachers are able to maintain that human connect, always reminds me of the Rita Pearson's TED Talk. I think Peterson. I'm sorry. So I think it's beautiful. So if we can maintain that, I don't think so. It's easy to replace. So there you go. Knowledge-wise, yes, AI can. So let's move into the last question for the session, and then we'll move into the break, into the open space for networking. So the last question that we have is from Daryl. So how can inherent dangers of bias and discrimination embedded in AI algorithms, possibly leading to unfair treatment or perpetual existing inequalities be addressed? So, in the context of education, so how do you think we can prepare both teachers as well as learners to counter these biases and discriminations? So, Amartya, if you can go ahead, and then Iggy can come in.
Yeah, so way back in school, in school days, we had a subject called moral science, right? And we were supposed to know that how we interact with people, what is good, what is bad, how to work, how to talk with a fellow human being, right? So as long as each and every student in the education system has this knowledge, again, AI is something made by humans. So uh, we can, counteract and avoid these if such situations arise where the biases and discriminations come in the response of an AI system or an AI tool. We know how to, interact or avoid them. We know how to block that out. And another thing that I feel is that there should be a little bit more responsibility should be on the part of the people who are developing these tools. Right, for instance, ChatGPT. So there should be, points or places where we can, report some results, report some text, or report some output, given by such tools. So these can again be used to enhance the response of the AI. So something that is not offensive to me may be offensive to some other section of the society, right? And that is very much true in this world, and that is very much applicable for all of us. So what I feel is not demeaning demeaning for that person, for any other person on the other end of the world. But that person should have the outlet to express himself that okay, this thing is not something that I expected from an AI tool, and that this feedback should be used for betterment of these tools. It's not something. It's not the end of the world that these biases and discriminations. It's everywhere, right? It's everywhere. It's in humans, even in today's age. It's everywhere, right? So I think that's it. That's how we should go forward.
Amartya, Iggy?
Well, that's a very interesting topic. I agree with the comments of Amartya. I do some research on this topic actually, and one very recent. I will share a link of one of the papers we published last year about how stereotyped technologies are worldwide, and we evaluated almost 100 technologies, and we saw that 2 billion registered students are being affected in the world. So that's a challenge, and we cannot. Of course, we should understand that we are all biased. We have more than 100 years of research on psychology about that, and we are all biased. So before we think about the technology being unbiased, we need to understand that most of the AI technologies nowadays are based on data and data that we created, and we are biased people. So by saying that, we need to, unfortunately, we need to invest lots of money to somehow do some pre-processing and adjusting the database to avoid or data set to reduce the level of bias. And it can be in different perspective, gender, ethnical, social demographic, and so on. So according to the purpose of the technology, we should do some kind of treatment in the data set. The second point is we in the world can regulate AI. That's happening actually, and but again, all of the discussion is much more focused on the risks of AI. But what is the risk of AI in education? It's quite easy to think about AI being used in autonomous cars or weapons or medicine, but we tend to ignore how maybe in education it's much riskier, but it's very abstract for people to understand that. What is the implications of not having the students learning? There are so many implications. Maybe we can also I think that can lead to wars. So maybe not learning is even riskier than developing an intelligent weapon. The challenge that I see is, uh, again, on one hand, think about, and very pragmatic, think about the data set, and the other, we think about the importance of education to avoid those bias in the future or to reduce.
Thank you so much, Ige and Amartya. I have this opportunity to ask Ige and Amartya if you have any questions that you have to each other uh, and to me. You can we can just do the a cycle of questions that you have that you would like to seek answers around from either us or in general.
Yeah,
I have a
I
question. Oh,
okay.
go ahead, Amati.
Yeah, you can go first, sir.
No, my question is about. I really like the comments of Amartya, especially about AI literacy. So my question is very specific about AI literacy, and especially should we think about AI literacy uh, since from early childhood, or should we focus on specific levels like secondary education, higher education? What's your opinion?
Sir, early childhood. Say a child nowadays is using their mobile phone and their laptop and they're so much tech savvy, as we say. We in our childhood did not have. I'm very much sure that none of us in this panel have had the exposure to a mobile phone in our childhood, right? So nowadays a child has it. Is it good for them? Is it bad for them? That is, there are both sides to it. The way a child can explore and find their way around an Android or iPhone is not something I could have done in my age at that point of time. Right? That's what I feel. But again, I find that they have stopped going outside and playing. I find that they have stopped studying, going through storybooks. They have stopped painting. They have stopped drawing. So there are both sides to it, as I was saying. So same thing I feel is applicable for AI because they are already using these tools where the AI, they're always using these platforms where AI has exposure, right? AI in simple forms is there in your mobile phone. So why not introduce them to Google, Google search and Google Assistant and Alexa? Why not introduce them? Why not make them understand about it from the very basics? I'm not saying that we need to, make them understand the exact neural network structure behind ChatGPT while they're in their, kindergarten. But we can make them introduced to AI because they are already using the platforms. They are in touch with these platforms. They have exposure. We are not going to stop our kids from using a mobile phone or a laptop in their childhood. We can't do that. We are beyond it. We are beyond that stage. And there are AI systems in these tools also. Each mobile phone has an AI system. Almost all of us, we want to have Alexa in our homes. The Siri is there in your iPhones. So why not introduce them? So the things would be more comfortable that way, rather than simply putting it as a part of their curriculum that they have to know in order to pass another subject. I think they should be that way. But of course, I would like to hear your take as well, both Aryan and Iggy.
Yes. Uh, Ige, would you like to go ahead?
No, I agree with Amartya. The challenge is exactly how far should we go on that uh, exposure to AI. I have two kids. Very, you saw them, 4 and 5 years old, and somehow I try to explain them what is AI. I live in Cambridge in the US. Now I'm in Brazil, but I live in Cambridge, and I went with them for the Museum of Science to know the robot from Boston Robotics, and somehow try to explain them about AI. And it's funny because they say, okay, I want to see the AI. So they explained that they didn't say I want to see the dog, I want to see the AI. So I agree that we should teach as soon as possible, because the world is AI is everywhere, right? So I agree with you. The challenge is how can we go from the abstract to the concrete by teaching those students. That's why I'm very interested about AI literacy, and that's why I asked you, because I would like to get a feedback from you as well about my rationale with my kids. Very personal question.
Thank you for that one, Ige. So I'll quickly come in and then have Oigoga ask his question uh, to you. So one of the things that I feel the greatest tragedy of our times would be if we don't prepare our young people to use something that they will use outside of work. It's just like how education systems need to prepare young people for a democratic way of life by being democratic spaces. I think in a similar fashion, we would like education institutions to prepare them as a pivotal tool, at least in the profession that we are preparing people for a future that we cannot see so easily. So now, knowing the fact that, like, okay, there's a possibility for AI to stay, even if it is, like, a remote possibility, to better prepare them. So I think even if it is, like, young kids in grade, say, 3 or 4, the first time I was introduced to computers or education, it was not like a physical computer, but it was a textbook around computers and C language and stuff like that. So as a kid, that was my first exposure. It was not even having a look at the computer. So I personally feel that that changes the way you look at technology. So growing up, when I reflect, I think that must have also been one of the reasons why I'm online and doing things online. So so I feel that, like, if we can prepare young people for a future that has AI in it, so we'll be in a much better space as we move ahead. So Oigoga, if you can come in with your question.
Hello, Aryan. Good day to you.
To you too.
Good day, Mr. Albert and Amaria. Please pardon me for pronouncing it the way I do. I'm so delighted to have the privilege to ask a question. I'm an educator here in Nigeria, specifically at a high school, Wesley High School, and I happen to be in the leadership position in the school. Um, my question will be, what piece of advice can we give to a teacher, a classroom teacher, who is overwhelmed with the opportunities available through AI? More especially a teacher who has a very poor background in digital literacy, for instance. What would be your piece of advice to down the tension in such a classroom teacher to see that actually AI is something there to make him or her productive in the education system? So what piece of advice, in other words, what should such a teacher begin to do in order to be part of the AI transformation in the classroom?
Thank you. Amartya, would you like to take this up?
Yes. Hi, Mr. Oigoga, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So it's a very interesting question. What happens with us? The pandemic actually it highlighted that we are very much reluctant in adopting the technologies. So, for instance, people like us, when we are teaching in the classroom, we have hardly thought of teaching over an online meeting, right? We had hardly thought of it. So for any person, such things can be overwhelming. Very obviously, such things when they're exposed to it for the first time, they can be overwhelming. This thing will take my job. This thing will, make me blunt. It will replace me. There's so many fears that come up. And for a person who has a lower amount of digital literacy, these fears we are exaggerated up to a great extent. So you can just have a simple session or a few sessions with that person. You may just discuss whether that person uses the internet or not, whether that person is online, whether that person has any social media accounts where they, you know, interact with other people, and then move them into understanding how AI is inculcated in all of these places, how AI can actually help in him or her becoming a better teacher, rather than be afraid of it and run away. Help them adapt it in their life. I think that could be possible, because I don't think it's such a case where that person is devoid of any technological exposure. I don't think that's the case. So digital exposure can be something that can be adapted. When I was a child, we did not have land phones. Then we had land phones which were wired. Then came up the cordless phones. Then we had these brick-like mobile phones, and nowadays we have so many things. So this thing is something we have to adapt to all our lives. So I think it's something very easy for an educator actually. If it were a normal person, any other person, it would have been difficult, but an educator has to keep on learning, right? That's my take. I would love to hear about the others.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we are towards the end of the discussion. But before I wrap it up, I just wanted to remind all of you that tomorrow we will be joined by an amazing uh, professor, Dr. Johanna Black. She is from the Faculty of Education, as well as she's an adjunct professor at University of Manitoba in Canada. So I'm very excited about the workshop tomorrow with her, and this is for all of the folks here at the forum. So please do join us tomorrow around the same time. You can check the schedule for tomorrow. So that's a bit of information about what's up for tomorrow. But before I wrap up, personally, I just wanted to apologize to all of you that we're having these technical difficulties, that it was a little hard for us to go ahead this time. Also, we were I'm very concerned about Glenn, and we'll be reaching out to Glenn to make sure that Glenn is fine. So, but thank you so much for being here. So let me formally wrap the discussion and then open the floor to have informal networking. So, like I say this every time, I always believe, or I have always believed that, creating an educational environment that is intentional, inclusive, empathetic, compassionate, and mindful is crucial for the growth, development, and success of all educators and learners alike. So it is the responsibility of every leader within the education sector to shape responsible policies and practices that foster such an ecosystem. With educators, school leaders, and students all working together, I believe we have the power and potential to affect a positive transformation in the field of education. So I understand that we might have a lot of questions that we may not have been able to cover or answer them sufficiently through this discussion. I'd really love to know your thoughts, ideas, suggestions, feedback through our community. So we have an exclusive community that we are trying to build for all educators to come in and have these discussions. And this community will also be a precursor to the conference that we'll be doing. So you can join the community. If you need access link, just write to us and we will provide you access. We want to make sure that only educators join this community. So we want to make sure that the right folks are in the community. So please reach out. So we would appreciate your recommendations on topics that you'd like to see, or if you'd like to recommend somebody to feature a presentation or be part of the discussion, please let us know. So, on behalf of the Global Citizenship Foundation, the Council for Global Citizenship Education, and all our attendees, I extend my deepest gratitude to our panelists for taking out time from their busy schedules and enriching us with this discourse through their unique ideas, insights, and experiences. Also, thank you for being a part of Education Leadership Forum and for everything that you've been doing to advance this discourse on transforming education for human and planetary flourishing. We really appreciate your time, insights, efforts in driving this extremely crucial discussion towards shaping the many futures of education for generations of young people. So please, let's proceed to the lounge networking event. I hope that you're able to form friendships and bonds across distance and miles through this event. See you soon. Until then, take care, stay safe, spread love and compassion. Our world needs it more, as always. So thank you.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Bye bye.
Thank you. See you in the lounge.
Yeah.
See you.
Wow, we have Helen, Piaf, and Matsepo as uh, the leaders within this discussion in the audience. Thank you so much for engaging and being part of the initiative. I hope you have a great day.